Hi, my name is Bill. This is my video covering the 9th topic of some of the things I've learned in my life that I want to share. It concerns fallibility. And it also concerns a little bit about perfection, imperfection, and self-deception, which will probably be a video on and of itself. Infallibility, or should I say fallibility, the ability to have flaws, or more to the point, to make mistakes. This is kind of a tough one. It hurts the ego. It is, some would say, not beneficial. It's counterproductive to think that you are flawed, to think that you make mistakes. We're always taught to be certain and confident in our decisions, in our knowledge, and to be successful, you need to, no matter what, stick to your guns. No matter what the idea or what the concept or what the issue or what the principle, stick to your guns. Well, I don't want to say that's wrong, but I want to say that, no, I will say, it's wrong to just assume or to just go in an overconfident stance that you're right and everyone else is wrong. That your decision is the best decision there is. It's not. I'm not saying you should doubt yourself. What I am saying is that you should consider in every endeavor that you partake of, consider the fact that you are a flawed human being, that you have made mistakes in the past. You will make mistakes today, if not at this very moment, and you will make mistakes in the future. You are imperfect. Your senses are flawed to various degrees, as I have mentioned in a previous video. Your mind may not be of the caliber to comprehend something as fully as you need to before making a decision or engaging in a conversation. Your very nature, by the way you take in information, by the way you process it, even by the way you store the information and formulate conclusions, it's all a flawed process. It's not to say you can't be right. You could very well be right. And through careful procedural analysis, you could probably be more right than wrong. But you're still flawed. Now, as a life lesson, what does this mean? Well, for me, the best way to put it, I was a know-it-all for a long time. When I was a teenager, I was a know-it-all. If I didn't know, I asked questions. As an adult, anytime I learned a little something, I assumed I knew everything about it, and I would brag about it, seeking some kind of validation for my intelligence, as I mentioned before. If you told me I was wrong, I got mad and confrontational about it. But that was due to me forgetting the fact that I am, in fact, imperfect. I make mistakes. Now, I would have told you many years ago that after I make a mistake, I don't make it again. But that would have been a lie, because I have made sometimes the same mistake consciously or subconsciously numerous times before learning from it. I was not one to really like admitting my flaws or my mistakes. And I can assure you I'm not the only one. You might be someone just like that. You might not want to talk about that bad decision at work. You might not want to talk about the fact that you cheated on your wife and it was your fault. You might not want to consider that your entire understanding of, let's say, geometry was flawed since you learned it in high school by a bad teacher. You might not want to admit any of that. But the truth is, no matter what topic or what situation or what idea you might be pursuing, what decisions you might make, what actions you might take, there is a possibility you're making a mistake. And again, to always doubt yourself is not very productive. But to assume you're right about everything, being overconfident and being overly certain about everything, could be as much or equally counterproductive. For myself, I've learned to develop an open mind when doing things. As I've mentioned many times, I make mistakes. I've made mistakes and I will continue to make mistakes. As much as I try to not, I will. And the benefit I found in learning to, have a certain healthy amount of doubt and uncertainty in any topic or idea or action I take is helpful in determining if it's the right course of action. It allows for me to consider the situation, the knowledge, the input, to see, was I taught to understand that I might have been taught wrong, or I may have misunderstood a concept earlier in life, or I may have the wrong fact. Now, how does this benefit anybody? Well, for me, it benefited me, too many me's. For me, the benefit was in the form of engaging in people in a more productive fashion. You're going to find people to challenge you in any and every topic every day. You talk about politics, you talk about religion, you talk about simple philosophical or psychological ideas or concepts. You're going to find somebody that is going to challenge you. There's no question about that. And when these challenges happen, I find, with understanding my flawed nature, I find that I was able to better interact with them in the best and most constructive way possible, and even open themselves up, or help open themselves up to thinking they might be wrong. So, through my interactions with others, through the day-to-day activity, being challenged and, of course, challenging others, I learned to interact with people in a better way. To not just be diplomatic about a certain situation, but to actually consider what they have to say. Now, it is possible to interact with people in a certain way and not be confrontational, but most of the time when I did that, it was because I just assumed they were stupid and didn't know any better, and I just dismissed them out of hand. And any possibility of, giving them insight into what was wrong with them, or learning about what was wrong with myself, was gone. Now, some of you might not think this is important. Some of you are probably very successful in your life. Some of you have probably learned to deal with contradicting or conflicting ideas with others quite well. You just say, we agree to disagree. Well, that's fine. That's a good approach. It works. I do that sometimes myself, because some people are not like that. Some people don't want to admit their flaws. Some people believe that what they know is what they know, and it's true, and you can't tell them differently. Stubborn and hard-headed, like I used to be. But to be flawed means, for myself, and what I would suggest for you, is that if you just consider that in whatever situation you could be wrong, you could have learned something the wrong way, memorized a fact that really wasn't a fact, accepted a conclusion that was inaccurate or invalid, and you might be wrong. It's that admittance in the back of your mind, whenever you are encountered with that conflict or someone challenging you on what you are saying or what you're doing, it's that little voice in your head that could help you just maybe learn from what might be a big mistake. And that's really the point of all this. It's about accepting that you are a flawed individual, that you could be wrong. Just as a little example, let me see my time. Little example, I had a coworker one time a few years ago. He was very fluent in military history, you could say. He knew about equipment. He knew about a great many things, especially World War II. World War I especially, I guess, too. But he was quite fluent. He was in the military, and he had some background. But he was very self-righteous about his knowledge. He didn't like being challenged. I myself, being a cocky young man, I tried to be diplomatic about it, and in the process of talking to him, we got into a lot of contradictions. I suggested he may do a little more research, which of course he wasn't going to do. And then, luckily, we have smartphones at the time, and one conversation among many of them, which was pertinent to this particular lecture, or this particular video, was about Russia. Well, until the time, I just considered Russia to be Russia. Well, it's not. It's the Russian Federation. But we were arguing that Russia and Siberia were two different countries. I said Siberia was part of Russia, which is half true. He was saying no, Siberia was a nation in and of itself. And I'm like, well, no, that's not right. And we were discussing all this. And then his son, getting his smartphone out and having encountered this contradiction of ideas between me and his father numerous times before, looked at it, and he found out that there is something called the Russian Federation that is normally termed Russia, and Siberia is a nation inside the Russian Federation. But Russia is also a nation inside the Russian Federation, even though it's all called Russia. And so the end result with that was his father had to grudgingly admit he was wrong, which took a lot for this man to say this, because his son came up with the proof. But I said, no, we were both kind of wrong and both kind of right. I assumed Russia was a nation, and it was, but the Russia that I'm thinking of is actually the Russian Federation. So you were right. Siberia is a nation. The Russian Federation is a group of nations that has Russia in it. So that was a case where two people had two ideas that were fundamentally right, but conceptually wrong a little bit. And you could say I was more wrong in that situation than not. But I was willing to consider what he had to say at the time, and I was open to it. And the moment his son brought up the information, it made perfect sense. That being said, I was willing to admit that I was wrong and I make mistakes, and this is an example of one, just a factual mistake. And his father equally had a factual mistake. And I'm going to have to end it here, and I'll do another one about self-deception.